Now let's describe those features that are similar to all the types of muscle tissue, the cardiac, the skeletal, and the smooth muscle tissue. Let's start saying that the three types of tissue can contract. And contractility refers to the fact that the muscle can shorten during contraction. When you contract something, you make something shorter. When you contract two words and put them together, I am, you are making it shorter. So during contraction, the length of the muscle shortens. Okay, that all of them act like that. All of them shortens during contraction. And we can see in this example, we have the biceps brachii, the, the muscle of your brachial region that attaches, one end attaches on the scapula, the other end attaches on the radius. So when we contract that muscle, this is the original, not the original length, but it's something like this. So when we contract that muscle, we make it shorter and bulky. That action, when we contract, it pulls a bone with it. In this case, the radius. So it brings or lifts the radius towards the humerus. And we call that flexion of the forearm at the elbow. We already covered that on the last chapter in joints. So if you're not comfortable with your movements, I highly suggest you to go back and review that because we're gonna need that right now. Okay, so if one muscle contracts, we need the opposite muscle, the one located on the posterior aspect of your arm, to stretch out. So while one muscle is shortening, usually an opposite muscle is lengthening, is stretching out. So it can allow the contraction of the controlled movement of the biceps brachii. Okay, and we call that ability or that capacity extensibility of the muscle. That brings us to the third characteristic, which is elasticity. And the good thing is that uh, after we stretch the muscle, it can recall back to its original length. And that is called elasticity. So in contractility, we shorten the muscle. In here, we're shortening the biceps brachii. In here, we're shortening the triceps brachii. While we contract one muscle, the other one extends or stretches. That's extensibility. When triceps brachii here is contracting, is shortening, the biceps brachii is lengthening or stretching out. See? So the combination and the coordination of these two movements create, or these two processes create, smooth movements. And remember, when it goes back, the muscle goes back to the original position. Now we are talking about the elasticity of the muscle. Okay, that's similar to all of the type of muscle tissue. Another characteristic that they all share is that they all need an stimulation. They need somebody to wake them up, to tell them you need to go to work. Regardless that we are talking about a voluntary muscle or involuntary muscles, the three of them receives wires, which are the nerves from the central nervous system. This is the spinal cord, and these wires connect to the muscle and they turn on the muscle so it can contract. This is 100% sure for skeletal muscles and smooth muscle tissue, almost all the smooth muscle tissue. But the story is quite different for the cardiac muscle tissue, and we'll describe that when we get to talk about the heart. That ability of the nervous system to stimulate the the skeletal, the muscle tissue is called excitability. Now, another common thing that all of them have is that they all come from the same mummy. And the stem cell, the mother cell that gave rise to all of these type of muscles is the myoblast. And myoblasts are cells present in the embryo when we were again ugly fetuses. These cells, they become or differentiate into the skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle cells. Now, in the case, and in here I'm just going to talk about skeletal muscle tissue. Actually, from now on, the class is only about skeletal muscle tissue. Bye-bye, smooth and cardiac muscle tissue. Thanks for coming. Now, skeletal muscle tissue during fetal development, to form these cells, I'm telling you, hundreds of myoblasts, they fuse together to form one cell, a mature skeletal muscle fiber or muscle cell. This explains the fact that one skeletal muscle fiber has hundreds of nuclei because it's the product of the fusion of hundreds of myoblasts. Some of these myoblasts remain on the periphery around the muscle fiber, and they're called satellite cells. Got it? Satellites around? And these cells may be involved sometimes in the repair of this type of tissue. There's one little thing that I forgot to tell you on the previous video. Muscle tissue lacks centrioles. What does it mean? What is that organelle for? Remember, centrioles are the ones involved with the spindle formation during mitosis. If we don't have centrioles, the cells cannot divide. We cannot just divide the cytoplasm and the cell itself. So, muscle cells, after they're formed, mature muscle cells, they cannot divide ever. They cannot undergo mitosis. They cannot, this explains that the ability to repair itself of this tissue is very poor. The only guide that we can rely on to repair a minor injury on the skeletal muscle are the satellite cells. Satellite cells can, after minor injuries, I repeat, can form or produce new contractile proteins and put some patches in on the place of the injury. But a section, a severe injury, it simply cannot be replaced. And sadly, we cannot regrow the muscle tissue like we will with the skin. We cannot put a patch of muscle. When we have a major injury, the body repairs that injury, placing, guess what? Connective tissue, fibers, dense, irregular connective tissue. Okay, this is a scar, non-functional muscle. Tissue. This one doesn't contract. It's not muscle. Now, I want to take advantage of this slide. Actually, this illustration here on your left to explain two important concepts about skeletal muscles. Before that, I forgot one more thing that is common to all the muscle cells is that we are going to use the prefix sarco and myo to refer to certain parts of the muscle cell and the muscle. For example, sarco, when we will describe the skeletal muscle cell in the next video. The plasma lemma, the cell membrane of the skeletal muscle cell, is not called like that. You just put the prefix sarco. So you said it's called sarcolemma. The cytoplasm is not called cytoplasm, it's called sarcoplasm. The endoplasmic reticulum is called sarcoplasmic reticulum, a very important organelle in here. And we will describe a lot of structures that begins with the prefix myo. So if some word during your test somebody mentioned something about sarcopenia, I don't know, sarcophagus, myoblast, myofilament, you know that they are talking about muscles. I don't know exactly what, but they are talking about muscles. Now, I'm going to take advantage of this picture to describe two important terms that we need to understand very well now in skeletal muscles. And it has to do with the place of attachment of the skeletal muscle. Where's my arrow? I don't see it. Of the skeletal muscle on the bone. And one is the origin, one of the attachments, and the other one is the insertion. So any muscle has at least two places or two attachments, right? One is the origin and one is the insertion. How do we know which one is which? Well, usually the origin is proximal to the insertion. That's one. What defines an origin is that is the attachment of the muscle that moves the least during the contraction. It's the one that remains not immovable, but stable in there. And the place of or the attachment of the muscle that moves the most during the contraction is the insertion. That's a better definition. Another important fact in here is that, let me see if I can grab my pen. You know what I cannot find? My pen. Well, well, the thing is that the insertion moves towards the origin in the contraction of the skeletal muscle. Always. Insertion moves towards the origin. Example, biceps brachii. In here, the origin is on the scapula. The insertion is on the radius. So the insertion during the contraction moves towards the scapula. Insertion towards origin. There was something else I wanted to tell you about origins and insertions. And if I remember, I'll tell you in the next video. See ya!